Okay, great. Well, thank you all for joining today's webinar, Technology Solutions and Trends to Fight Financial Crimes. Our speakers today are Austin Hong. He's a partner of Finance and Risk Americas of the Anti-Financial Crimes and Compliance at Oliver Wyman. And we have Michael Shaler, our Financial Crimes Sales Solutions Executive at Expero. We're looking forward to the webinar. And again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. With that, I will go ahead and turn it over to our host.
Thank you, Laura. This is Michael Shaler. I'm from Expero. As she mentioned, I wanted to focus on today around anti-money laundering programs and kind of what is the state of the art in AML programs. Our guest today is, as Laura mentioned, is Austin Hong from Oliver Wyman, and I'm going to go ahead and ask a few questions about first of all, the first question is, Austin, can you tell us about your background and work at Oliver Wyman and make sure the audience is clear on what Oliver Wyman does?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Michael and Expero for inviting me to this webinar. It's an honor and privilege to be here today. So I am, as Michael mentioned, I'm currently a partner at Oliver Wyman in our anti-financial crimes practice. And I started my career as a former regulator, followed by 10 years of consulting, helping financial institutions and fintech companies enhance their AML program. Then I went in-house for 3 years. I led the financial intelligence unit of a top 10 bank. And then I returned to consulting. And, right now, having seen the evolution of this area over the past 2 decades, I think we are currently sitting at a very exciting time. And as a consultant, we have a unique vantage point in looking at the intersection of technology and how companies are leveraging technology to transform their compliance programs. And I think what's particularly exciting in the last 3 to 5 years is that technology now has matured to a state where we can detect, prevent, and report suspicious activities much better than we could have 5 years ago. We're seeing a lot of institutions moving away from static rules and incorporating more money laundering algorithms that are able to learn from not only humans, but also make the connections between counterparties that we weren't able to do as recently as 3 years ago. And what we are working with a lot of clients is the deployment of technology, primarily in 2 areas. One is on the modeling side to help financial institutions to better prevent, detect, and report suspicious activities. And what I mean by that is going back to the comment I made earlier on replacing the static rules. Now there are a plethora of technologies that are available, and it's a matter of implementing them and also making sure that the primary stakeholders, such as the auditors and the regulators, are brought on board and are comfortable with the approach and the implementation. The second area where technology is deployed is through the investigation process.
Yes.
And this has been primarily a manual type of process, and leveraging technology, making sure that the investigators have all the tools and technology in place to make sure that they can make the best judgment of what has occurred and being able to make a call on whether or not suspicious activity has occurred and whether or not to report it, and be able to provide a narrative in a clear and concise way. So those are some examples, Michael, what we're working on with clients here at Oliver Wyman.
Well, it's so interesting to me that you've made the transition from regulator to consultant, and you've done that in various ways. One of the things I'm struck by is kind of when you think about the end state that a robust AML program is looking for. One of the things that seems to be kind of paramount in this, and this is where kind of your practice seems to be really on the leading edge, is kind of the combination of kind of why process is so important and how to model that process. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of looking at both from the regulator point of view, as well as the financial institution point of view?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I view processes as a fundamental building block of an AML program. And sometimes when you look at process, it's oftentimes ignored or underinvested. Both from my in-house experience as well as working with clients, oftentimes I hear people running the process saying that, well, we've always done it this way. If it's not broken, why fix it?
Yes.
The reality is that oftentimes there are better ways to improve the process. And when you look at the various processes in an AML program, you have the investigation process, you have the process of identifying AML risks, deciding what type of rules to configure, and then you have the entire process of how you tune and enhance your current rules. I personally believe that standardization of the process is very, very important. I'll give you an example of my own experience back in the day of running the FIU at a top 10 bank, where we're looking to implement robotics process automation as part of our transformation of the AML operations. And the first step that we had to do was really just to understand the investigation process from end to end. And before the programmer, when we approached this issue, we thought our biggest challenge is probably going to be finding the programmers and the RPA developers to be able to code the language, identifying the tech platform to house the bots. But it turned out that the level of effort and the time that it took for us to standardize the process actually took much, much longer. And what I realized through this effort is that investigators, because they were located in different geographic regions, were conducting investigations in slightly different ways. Some of them were including items that, whereas some groups were not. And through the automation process, it really forces standardization, because when you program a code to tell a bot whether or not to retrieve a specific document or to include a specific information, it's binary, it's black and white. So that is an example of why process is so important to ensure the consistency and quality of the output from the AML program.
And when you think about kind of RPA is a great starting point and foundation for some of this work, but you mentioned a couple of things in there which I think are interesting. One of the things that is so kind of valuable in the work I've seen your team do is the end-to-end model validation that builds on RPA. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what that model validation looks like?
Yeah, I think when you look at the model validation process, we really look at several components, starting from the conceptual soundness of a model, of an AML model. And I think in addition to that, what is also critically important when we look at model validation is taking a look at the data that's necessary to as input to the models. And what we find many institutions sort of struggle with is taking both the data available, both in-house, internal data and external data, to run the models. That is something that takes a lot of time and effort to make sure that you get it right initially, but it also takes a lot of time to make sure that the data, due to changes in processes, as we talked about, due to changes in customer behavior, due to changes through acquisitions and divestitures, that the data continues to be maintained. So, that is one of the areas, when we help institutions on model validation, that we are laser focused on.
Well, it's interesting too, because when you and I were at ACAMS in Hollywood, Florida, earlier this or last month, I should say, one of the key findings on some of the panels we saw were the inability of multiple lines of business not working well together, and that creates cracks in the system. That's a great way for RPA to make the kind of seal the process integrity. But one of the things that is so interesting is when you cross lines of business, from credit card to mortgage to AML groups, you need a better integration of those internal and external data sources. Can you talk more about kind of what that looks like in a robust AML program?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think one of the challenges with running a strong AML program, as you pointed out, is working with the various stakeholders within the financial institutions. And oftentimes what that means is you can think about the different units within the financial institutions as almost different companies and different stakeholders that you have to customize and you have to work with individually. And I think the challenge there is, number one, educating the first line units of what is absolutely necessary and the goals that you're trying to accomplish in the second line and what your areas of responsibilities are. Take one area as an example where there's a tremendous amount of overlap between what is required in the second line and what is being conducted in the first line with the KYC process, both from an onboarding standpoint and customer refreshing standpoint. Yeah. And this is, connecting the dots between what I talked about, the data that's needed for the second line to be able to properly do their job and carry out their mandate. It's critically important that the KYC information is captured and sent over to the second line on a timely basis. One example I can provide here is that when I ran the FIU, we oftentimes requested a KYC refresh to the first line, and the first line will have its own process in place to reach out to the client to get that information. Now, if that information is not relayed in a timely manner, what oftentimes happens is that the second line oftentimes ends up filing a suspicious activity report because of the lack of information to be able to ascertain whether or not suspicious activity has occurred. As a result, this creates more work. There's a continuous activity report that needs to be reviewed 90 days from then, and if a SAR is filed and if the bank has a 3+ SAR account closing review and a holistic review of the customer relationship and activity is conducted. So you can see, as a result of an untimely KYC refresh could result in a lot of unnecessary and added work by the second line as a result of that, the failure of the first line in capturing the information in a timely manner.
You just summarized all the interactions inside a bank and outside a bank in one fell swoop. That's a lot. There's a lot going on there. One of the things I think that's interesting from an AML focus is we look at KYC as being necessary but not sufficient. KYCC, knowing your customer's customer, starts to get into the place where we want to go. And one of the things that's so interesting about that is, that highlights both how things have changed in the AML space in terms of large, long transactional chains with lots of complexity, both inside and outside financial institutions. So what do you, kind of from the Oliver Wyman point of view, what do you see are the key business pain points and challenges that kind of drive this focus on process automation and kind of alert and case management from an AML perspective that enables your clients to achieve KYCC?
Yeah, I think in addition to what we just talked about, Michael, on the KYC process, which had, by the way, it's really been a major pain point for many clients of ours. The second area that I have found is having the adequate controls in place to self-identify issues before auditors and regulators identify them. And I think banks have made a lot of progress in this area, and many of them are transitioning from more of a reactive type approach to a proactive type approach. And what I mean by that is in the past, oftentimes financial institutions will usually only dedicate the time, energy, and effort when the regulators or auditors have pointed out areas of deficiency of financial institutions. However, now many second line units have built up their monitoring, testing, and QA capabilities to be able to self-identify those issues and remediate them before the regulators and auditors point out these issues. And, oftentimes the analogy I like to use is, if you're able to contain a campfire sooner, you can prevent it from becoming a forest fire, which will require
Yes.
the amount of energy to be able to put out. So I think this continues to be a pain point, but banks have also taken tremendous amount of effort and investment in building out their internal controls and testing capabilities. The third area that I have found that has been a pain point, as I talked about earlier, in transitioning from more of a static rule type framework to a machine learning and more dynamic approach in looking at suspicious activities. I think one of the pain points, especially during the COVID period, is the rule set, given that it's static in nature, it's not as flexible and can't be tuned and changed in time to be able to accommodate change in customer behavior. One of the things that we saw during the COVID period is what used to be suspicious behavior during the COVID period was not really suspicious behavior. And
Yes.
an example of that is our excessive ATM rules that were in place at the time. You would think that somebody withdrawing, let's say, over $5,000 in cash over a 30-day period used to be somewhat suspicious. You want to look into what's going on. However, during the COVID period, we had a huge spike in alerts on excessive ATM tag activities. And what really happened was people who were receiving unemployment benefits, people who were receiving government assistance programs, though the money was loaded onto debit cards, and bank customers were going to the ATMs and withdrawing it in cash. Some perfectly legitimate legal transaction, but the static rules don't know that. So one of the pain points that we are really working with clients to address is, how do you change the static rules that you currently have in place to a more dynamic type of framework to be able to account for changes in customer behavior in a timely manner.
Well, it's so interesting that you point this out, because when I think about one of the key jobs of an AML investigator or investigator team, managing alerts like you just described, especially when they're just kind of static spray and pray alerts, makes that task very, very difficult. And that's where obviously RPA can help. That's where machine learning can help. And that's where our dynamic querying capabilities are, kind of really come home. So given those challenges that you outlined, things have changed. Banks are still worried about, kind of how they can go faster with lower risk, higher rates, higher accuracy and detection. And let's be clear, fewer fines. What are the technology components critical to a vibrant and effective AML program?
Yeah, I think I touched on a couple of them already. First, data, critically important. The models are only as good as the data input. To have a strong data management process in place, I think, is key. Two, having a technology platform that has the flexibility to allow financial institutions to build around the core systems.
Yes.
And what we have realized is that rip and replace for most medium and large size institutions is not a feasible solution. And the reason for that is because they have invested a lot of money, time, and also customization of the systems that they have. I think the best way to be able to implement and take advantage of new technology is to build around the core system that they have. So being able to have that flexibility, I also think, is a critical technology component for a vibrant and effective AML program.
Okay, that's awesome. And so when you work with clients, kind of what is the prescriptive fast path to success in rolling out, an AML program that makes sense from a technology perspective? What is the fast path?
Yeah, I think the fast path is probably different for each financial institutions, and oftentimes the decision that they're confronted with is buy versus build.
Yep.
And oftentimes what we have found is that building technology in-house is oftentimes takes longer. It is more costly, and primarily because banks are primarily banks, despite some of the fact that some banks think that they are strong on the technology side, but oftentimes they are not as nimble, or they're just simply not constructed in a way to be able to build technology in a way that technology companies can. So I think one of the fast paths to success is finding the right technology partners, and this is both identifying internal partners as well as external partners, and making sure that both internal and external stakeholders are aligned in the technology roadmap. One last thing I would say about the fast path and rolling out is we oftentimes advise clients that they should not only think about the level of effort for implementing new technology, but also the investment to be able to maintain it and enhance it and customize it and change it on a going forward basis, because there's no doubt that technology needs to be customized and needs to be changed as a result of process changes, products being offered, acquisitions, divestitures, and so forth. So having that flexibility and having that knowledge in-house and having the right partners in place to be able to maintain the technology on a going forward basis is also critically important.
That's awesome. So, it's so interesting to me because at the end of the day, when I think about kind of the hallmark of a robust AML program, it's really about increasing accuracy of SARs and making sure that kind of the technology brings together, as you said, the internal and external partnerships that are needed to make, to be the tide that lifts all boats in the AML program space.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So now I'm going to kind of transition, kind of taking your, kind of really great insights in terms of how to, kind of increase automation, how to leverage technology, how to, leverage both internal and external data partnerships as well as process partnerships, and, technology as well to help that. We're now going to kind of turn the discussion over to kind of how we have tried to address your key points, both in terms of business goals and outcomes, but also kind of how to get there. And so I'm going to go ahead and dig in, and then we're going to show a demo that actually starts to show the specifics of how we go about this. And it'd be great to hear your feedback. So I'll be asking Austin to kind of talk about what these things can mean for both, banking and non-banking financial institutions. So Expero works great with Oliver Wyman, and we work across multiple vertical markets, but kind of our Expero Financial Crimes and Expero Connected Finance solutions are analytics programs to address AML and be the technology add-on to existing systems. We are adamantly against rip and replace. We are adamantly pro extend and embrace. So we have a couple of business lines, and I'm focused on connected financial crimes. And we have a wide array of financial use cases. AML is so important to us, but there are others as well. And our solution focus is really about increasing accuracy, decreasing false positives, because we can actually do KYCC with our technology stack. And we work together with the models from Oliver Wyman to actually, address legislative and regulatory compliance changes, how to do better model management, and it's a modular solution. It actually bolts onto the things that already exist. So we're able to work with the portfolio of legacy systems are out there, and we're able to take that and make it much, much better by, starting with increasing accuracy and addressing those business pain points that Austin talked about. We have a bunch of modules. We have a way to do alerts, and we can do calculations and time series, and we have security and surge built in, and we can access all of those different internal and external data sources and data partnerships that Austin was talking about. One of the things that we see, and this is where kind of we start from left to right, as we increase accuracy, we are able to add more capabilities around machine learning, around humans in the loop, visualization, and complex graph analytics that really make a difference, that go beyond just standard SQL, NoSQL tools that exist. And we're able to add capability to that in ways that few others we've seen so far. One of the things that we see is our accuracy boost is over 45% against legacy systems. Austin, how do you think this helps the business when we think about what we're working on clients together?
One of the things that I have noticed that, especially the investigation process, it's quite manual in nature. So the visualization component, the user interface, I think is an area of great opportunity for financial institutions to invest in, to provide better tools for the investigation process. So take, for example, an investigator takes on an alert, tries to start the analysis process. What we have seen in the past is they would receive a spreadsheet with hundreds and sometimes thousands of transactions, and trying to sort it and organize it in a way that will be easily digestible to them. Now we have seen graphical solutions that will be able to display the transactions and counterparties in a much more user-friendly way, therefore getting the accuracy as well as the efficiency boost that you see on this slide.
That's fantastic. Thank you for those insights. Now let's talk about the specifics. This is actually, this is empirical data we gathered together at a client. We saw 84% improvement in alert management, and we saw alert accuracy go 100% better. And Austin, you were talking about kind of how to leverage RPA and automation and process improvement, but this is the kind of breakthrough capability that we're seeing, measurable breakthrough capability that we're able to deliver at clients together. This is pretty exciting, I think, for being able to make a big difference in people's lives. You were talking before about how ATMs were flooding alerts, and now we're able to eliminate alerts that don't make sense or don't apply to an AML case in this example. This is a real breakthrough. What do you think this means from a business perspective for our clients together?
I think this is very consistent with how the regulators view and expect financial institutions to run their AML program. And what I mean by that is this is truly taking a risk-based approach and looking at potential suspicious activities. I think the greatest lift that you can, every financial institution has a finite amount of budget and people. And what you want those individuals to be focused and spending their time on are the highest risk type of alerts, and not be bogged down in non-issue alerts, activities that should not even rise to the level of starting an investigation. And the fact of the matter is, if an alert is generated, a human oftentimes is assigned to look at it. So what you have here is, sort of eliminating the extremely low risk alerts ahead of time and learning from the dispositions of investigators in the past, as well as leveraging more data to be able to get a more accurate result on the type of activities and alerts that humans should be dedicating and investing their time on.
That's awesome. Thank you for that view. Now let's talk about process in terms of how we, kind of engage a bank or a financial institution, a non-banking financial institution, from a kind of a journey perspective. We start with screen ingest. We do model and entity matching. That's where our teams really work closely together. Then we start to integrate graph analytics and machine learning and screening and alert management. We build out dashboards, and then we get into case management. So kind of the two pillars of alert management, case management really make a huge difference in terms of how we do that. But what's also interesting is we're working with different personas within these financial institutions. And so we're able to go span the entire array of partnerships inside and outside these institutions to really deliver what I think is breakthrough business value in terms of being able to get much higher accuracy and helping investigators, as you said, take a much more intelligent risk-based approach to KYCC to drive outcomes from a suspicious activity report and investigation perspective. So this is kind of how we work together with the various partnerships. And here are the modules that serve each one of those personas and outcomes. So with that, we're going to kind of discuss kind of the approach we take, but also we're now going to deliver an all-in-one solution that kind of layers on top of legacy systems and gives much better accuracy, and it helps drive the kinds of outcomes you're talking about, Austin. So with that, I'm going to now turn this over to a demo, and we're going to go ahead and transition to the demo. So what you see here is kind of our framework for the Expero Connected Financial Crimes solution. And we're going to start with alerts triggers, and I'm now digging into kind of how we do trade and transactions on looking for blacklists. You can see that we actually have the ability to do both Boolean filtering as well as connected network algorithms and machine learning algorithms. So we're going to start with the basics. We're going to build out this capability. You see each of one of these tiles has a key bit of logic. In the first one, I'm actually saying the employee I'm going to start with an account ID. I'm going to go to employee. I'm going to leverage whatever kind of account that is. And you can see we're already crossing different lines of business. To Austin's earlier point, we're actually looking for thresholds on the transaction. And this is all dynamic. This is not a set of static business rules that can't be changed, like the ATM example that Austin gave. We're also addressing new features, new products like crypto exchange, how far the connections are, who's on the blacklist. And then we went all the way through all those Boolean filters, and now we're adding machine learning capabilities. So Louvain clustering is a way to do community detection. It's a very computationally intensive algorithm, but it helps find KYCC behaviors across long transactional chains. And it helps us find not just mules, but crime rings. And it helps us do more to help drive outcomes. So we can figure out the centrality of how much influence these things have. And then we can also do cycle detection. Does the set of transactions round trip back to its origin? And these last three algorithms are powerful in identifying fraud and anti-money laundering behavior at scale. So we're going to go ahead and click next here. We're going to test this out and see, this is kind of where my data science partners inside the bank are looking at this, and they're saying, okay, this model works because I found 30 matches. My accuracy is 91%, and I'm actually going to touch at least $1 million in potential fraudulent behavior, suspicious behavior, let's say. And so I can actually then say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and publish this alert inside the AML team, and we're going to continue to start to drive alerts that are all about, kind of what is potentially suspicious. So Austin, let me ask you this. When you think about kind of the combination of the Boolean logic and the network algorithms, does that change kind of how you think about kind of the dynamic environment you pointed to, what represents a robust AML program?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the way where some institutions have made more progress than others, but I have no doubt in my mind that eventually this is a place where all institutions will migrate towards, because I firmly believe that the static rules are not fit for purpose anymore. Both from the fact that we have, number one, we're seeing much more sophisticated and larger volumes of illegal and suspicious transactions, and two, the technology. Not only the technology, but the cost of storing data has come down significantly recently to be able for financial institutions to make this business case to leverage the latest technologies that are in the marketplace.
And I think that one of the things that's interesting, I want to go back to kind of something you brought up earlier, which is, kind of, thinking about this in the context of model validation. What is the value and how do we increase government visibility? What do you think this approach does for those needs?
I think that the model validators will also need to invest the time in understanding what the latest technology is available to them. And it's not just model validators, but also the regulators. I don't think it's acceptable for an auditor or a regulator to view any of these solutions as a black box type solution where they can't really understand the logic and the construction of these models. So I do think that across the this entire chain of stakeholders, from the AML participants to the technology providers, need to provide the documentation necessary so that the model validators and the regulators are able to understand it and validate it. And what I have seen in the marketplace, both during my time as a regulator and as well as in-house, is increasingly you have quant people that are accompanied by AML subject matters experts on the exam team to the AML exams with a focus on understanding and unpacking the technology that has been deployed in the marketplace.
Well, it's interesting. So I jumped ahead in the demo here to kind of highlight, that we have workflow that embraces both the quant data science machine learning group, as well as the investigators and the executives, so that everyone's on the same page. And quite frankly, this makes it more powerful. And it's going to be interesting to see over time how regulators are going to expect, we can reasonably expect as they come up to speed on what kind of advanced model development includes, that also means that they're going to have to come up to speed on kind of understanding some of the nuances we're talking about. Louvain is very powerful for finding crime rings, AML rings, and so all of a sudden we're talking about kind of a full advancement of the state of the art, both on the bank side as well as the regulator side. So this is interesting to, you talk about internal and external partnerships. All of a sudden things are going to change as we collaborate even better. So now I'm going to kind of transition to more detail about the alerts. And so you can see I've got a bunch of alerts in my queue. I'm now kind of putting on my investigator hat, and I'm going to dig into, I have two alerts here, and I'm going to look at both these alerts have a common thread in that Fran Farmington, our fictitious synthetic bad actor, is in the center of this ring. And all of a sudden we're seeing that, you know, there's suspicious activity as a customer and suspicious activity as an employee. So there's multiple layers of fraud and anti-money laundering potential here. And what we can see is we have this network view of things, but we can also say, I need to be able to kind of stitch together multiple cases that might be interacting. So I can actually explore this alert queue, and then I can develop a case around that. And so now we're transitioning from alert management to case management. And you can see here on the bottom, I have a timeline that enables me to travel back and forth in time. I also have the view of different snapshots as my case evolves, and I can actually collaborate to your earlier point about how I can work together internally and externally with how these cases develop. And I mentioned before, I had two overlapping alerts. You can see on the right, I have a map of showing where activity is happening. I have time at the bottom, but I also have case comments, and I can collaborate. Now I'm going to start to dig into a specific case here. And you can see that one of the things that's kind of highlighted here is I have overlapping activities that are suspicious in nature. And I need to understand, you know, as I dig into this investigative approach, I can actually, you know, take different views of the network graph, but I can also then say, okay, I can decorate the graph. I can actually highlight where I see problems as an investigator that I want to promote this case. I want to focus on, you know, really showing why this warrants a suspicious activity report. So you see in the middle, I have a customer named Fran Farmington who has an account. Fran is also an employee, fictitious employee. And you can see that this person actually needs to have both kind of an internal and external view of things. In your work on behalf of Oliver Wyman, Austin, do you see this kind of thing being important to both banks and non-banking financial institutions?
Yeah, I do. And I think when AML programs at financial institutions look at deploying technology, you know, what you're showing here, Michael, is particularly helpful and impactful on the investigation side in better understanding what is exactly happening of the alerts that have been generated. And to have a framework like this instead of an Excel file.
Yes. Excel is awesome, but it's not sufficient for this kind of investigation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what an investigator is tasked with is trying to make sense of the transaction, be able to make a determination as to whether or not a particular alert or a case should be escalated, and ultimately whether or not it should suspicious activity report should be filed, and B, being able to justify and document
yes,
their disposition. So I think this certainly helps in both cases.
That's awesome. And I think that, you know, I'm struck by a couple of things here. One is that, you know, kind of reducing, you know, low risk alerting is powerful. And that's what, you know, kind of a combination of filtering and algorithms do. But then as cases move through the system and through the investigation process, it becomes easier to show, not just tell, you know, column A and you know, line, you know, 3 is not a sufficient answer. But this shows where the activity is over time and where the cases are developing. And so we have transactions that we can flag, we can say, oh, look, this happened at this point, but not until earlier. And we're seeing patterns repeat over time. And so some of the AML has seasonality. Some of it has, you know, smaller transactions that build into bigger transactions. You mentioned the example about ATM alerts and how that changed during the COVID era. So what happens as a result of this, or what the goal here is to, you know, decrease false positives, increase accuracy, and have better outcomes for the entire practitioner community. So I think we've covered the demo, and just to recapitulate how this ties into some of the things Austin was saying is, we are able to build complex models that we can validate with Oliver Wyman. We can actually help customers, clients connect with the internal and external data and processing partnerships. And then we can also then develop cases that have higher likely outcomes in terms of where we think we can go. So with that, I'm going to close out the demo, and we're going to return back to the slides for a brief moment just to summarize. And let me just do that real quick. And so we're able to connect it all into a single solution. We're able to do, leverage multiple use cases. We have scalability and performance, as Austin mentioned. Data is much cheaper to store, and we can actually put it into places where it can deliver the most value. We had machine learning and clustering for graph analytics applications, and we can make this easy to use from a business UI perspective and role-based access. And we think we've worked really well with our partners like Oliver Wyman and our clients and our clients to deliver the right user experience, the right interface. So with that, one last question for you, Oliver. What's the kind of the next step for the people who are listening today? Where do we need to kind of point them to get started?
I think this sort of ties to where I believe the future state of the AML program will be, and what I'm seeing many of my clients sort of moving towards. I think three things that I like to share with the group. Number one is, I think it's been a key theme of this forum, which is leveraging more technology, and the future state of an AML program, I think, will include a lot more quantitative people, such as data scientists and machine learning specialists.
Yes.
That I think definitely is a trend that I'm seeing. And that's not to say that there won't be a large team of investigators that are conducting the investigations. I don't think machines and technology will completely replace humans, but I do think that it will provide a higher quality investigation. And it would also enable investigators to have better tools to aid them in the investigation. And the second thing is the future state is on the investigation side, having information displayed and configured in a way that's easily digestible.
Yes.
Friendlier user interfaces through graphical databases, such as what you just showed, Michael, essentially providing the investigators with the best in class tools to help them not only get to the decision faster, but also aiding them in making the right decision. And finally, I do think that this is probably a little bit more challenging for financial institutions, and it requires, and the reason why I believe it's more challenging is because it requires more stakeholders, is better public-private and private-private collaboration. And, we have seen both the private sector as well as the public sector, particularly through the enactment of the AML Act of 2020. And there's been a lot of talk in establishing a beneficial ownership registry. And I think this is to the benefit of the entire industry to make sure that that becomes a reality, in which we have the collaboration between the public sector and the private sector in setting up something like a beneficial ownership registry to enable better transparency, as well as better data to allow financial institutions to carry out their mandate.
Those are great points. I get excited about the both public sector, private sector kind of collaborative approach to kind of taking advantage of both the data quality and the ability to process this data in a much more dynamic, powerful way. One of the questions I just saw come in from one of our audience, and this kind of addresses it, and it's kind of, maybe it's a false distinction, but it'll be interesting to see what you say. And we're about to wrap this up, Austin. But one of the last questions we have is the process more important, or is it the shiny new toy of new technology? And what do you think is really kind of the starting point?
I personally think that financial institutions should incorporate both. I think that there isn't an AML program on the street that can claim that they are already in a state where no improvements are necessary. So I think that I would encourage my clients to have a mindset of continuous improvement,
Yes.
both from a process and technology standpoint, and think of ways of how to incorporate both in their program.
Well, it's so interesting because another question that was just raised on the technology side was, does the solution we just showed bolt on to NICE Actimize or other legacy systems? And the answer is yes. And so we're able to take, to your point about continuous improvement, is we're able to take what you have today, no written place. We can help you get to KYCC with, this layer on technology approach that actually helps both, from the technology perspective, that stance that the institutions are looking for, and the process improvements you're talking about. So with that, we're going to wrap up today. Austin, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed hearing kind of the insights you shared and kind of the call to action to really dig into how to have a continuous process of, a more robust AML program approach. And boy, we would love to work together on more, even bigger and better client opportunities. So thank you so much for your time today. And thank you everyone for joining. Please let us know if you have any questions, and we'll be in touch as soon as possible with all of our attendees and others. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.